Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it, and thanks for being here today. Anyway, this is the audience participation portion of this. Everyone has to repeat after me. Past performance is no guarantee of future returns. There we go. Actually, there's another audience participation portion of this. We're going to play a little mind game. And I want you to kind of work with me on this and answer a couple of questions. And the first thing I want you to do is pick a number between 1 and 10. Now, don't tell anybody what it is. Just keep it to yourself. Pick a number between 1 and 10. I'm taking you back to elementary school. Now, I want you to double it. We're doing some basic math. Add 8. Now, divide by 2. Now, subtract your original number. It gets a little more complicated. Now, here's the hard part. Remember that number, right? Now, we're going to move to spelling. I want you to take it and assign a letter of the alphabet to that number where 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, 4 is D, and so on. You got it? You got your letter now? Now, I want you to think of a name of a country. We're playing geography. Think of a name of a country that starts with your letter. Now we move to spelling. Now take the second letter in the name of that country and pick an animal that starts with that letter. I am 8 derivatives into your mind at this point. Finally, I want you to think of that animal and pick a color. You got it? How many of you saw a gray elephant in Denmark? About 90%. The rest of you got your math wrong. Bottom line is we know how you think. People are not that different. Your brains are hardwired in a very specific way. And given a set of inputs, you will come up with logically, or sometimes illogically, a response. And that response is predictive, which is an important thing to know. Oh, by the way, do any of you know any irrational people? Don't look at them, right? But we're going to be able to deal with these things. But in the end, we do know how you think. And when we think about how we invest in that environment, how we think about that environment, you all know by now, most of you have the coffee cup that has it on it. Principles are non-negotiable. People don't care what you know until they know you care. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We're a planning-based firm. But human behavior drives consumption. See, nobody makes a penny until someone decides to buy. And if we know how you think, we also know how the rest of the country thinks. And we can be predictive about not only what you're going to buy, but who you're going to buy it from. And those are the companies we invest in. You see, we have a very defined process based on that principle. We look for big knowable themes. What's driving a whole lot of you to do something? And then we identify the choke points. Now, most of you have heard me talk about this before, but now you're actually hearing the world talk about choke points a lot more, right? The word has come into lexicon. By the way, I trademarked the term choke point investing about 15 years ago. Your team's a little bit ahead of the game. But the important thing to recognize, we identify the choke points. And the choke point's that point in place and time that everything's got to go through there to get from where it is to where it wants to be. The guy that controls the choke point controls satisfaction. It's like a drawbridge across a river. How many of you have been stuck behind a drawbridge and you'd sit there and go, I'd pay that guy an extra $100 if he just let it down and let me get across? Well, those choke points exist in almost all our supply chains. Your investment team's job is to identify them. Figure out who's best at the choke point, who's going to make excess profits because they have pricing power. It's like having a little monopoly. And that turns into better performance of the stock, And that turns into growing and preserving your wealth. It's not any more complicated than that. I wish it was. It'd make us seem smart. But the important thing is we follow this by looking at big knowable themes. So I'm going to explore a few of those right now. One of those big knowable themes that we're dealing with today is war and oil. Now, folks, there's 30 wars going on in the world right now. 30. We only pay attention to one or two. Why? Because it affects our pocketbook. It affects the price of oil. But my job here is to give you some perspective on that. And that is that, first of all, $60 a barrel is stimulative. $80 a barrel, everything's all pretty good. Everybody's making money, it's all working out. $100 a barrel begins to be a little restrictive. We're sucking some money out of the economy because people have to pay for gas. $120 a barrel is a little bit recessionary. So when you take a look at these levels and see what's going on, there's things that you worry about and you don't worry about. You get irrational about and you don't get irrational about. So right now we've seen oil spike up to 110 and come back down. It's a global commodity. It's set by math. But I want you to understand that right now we're in a very different set of circumstances than we were in 1974 and where we were in 2022. When the Ukraine war happened, we ended up in a supply shock. We did not have enough oil because we didn't have enough oil wells. We didn't have drill, baby, drill. And for that point, we had a shortage of supply. We don't have a shortage of supply now. The world has plenty of oil and access to plenty of oil. We have a transportation problem. And so that's why when you see this spike up to 110, everybody gets a little more rational and recognizes the price needs to be about 95 right now. So the price comes down. And so we're bouncing around not in 110 to 120 land, but we're bouncing around in 80 to 90 or 80 to 95. And quite frankly, this is a short-term set of circumstances. Why do we care? Well, we care because the two most recognized prices in America are your mortgage rate and the price of oil, or actually what you pay for gas. You know what you pay for your mortgage, you know what you pay for gas, you probably don't know what you pay for peanut butter. And the point of the matter is, now in California, we pay a lot more than $4.03 a gallon. But for the rest of the country, that's the average. It's called price elasticity of demand. It's an economic term. But at what point does the price get so high that behavior changes? Well, in the United States, it's $5. When gasoline gets to be $5 a gallon, behavior changes. Bubba turns to Leroy and says, "We're taking your truck today." All right? And people that don't even like each other start carpooling. It makes a difference. But what does it do? The cure for high prices is high prices. All of a sudden, you take two 12-mile-per-gallon trucks and turn it into one 24-mile-per-gallon truck because it's carrying two people. So the point of the matter is we're in this $4 range, could bump up to $5 short term, and it goes back down. And what's going to happen when we solve some of these upcoming problems, it's going to go back down to a level that is in that $3 range and below. Now, again, I said it is a traffic problem. It is not a supply problem. It is a traffic problem. Let me give you some perspective on Iran. Now, folks, this is on your, why do we worry about it? Well, we talk about it every day. Iran is not a small country. It is the Persian Empire. It is a tremendously rich history and civilization. And by the way, it's not Arab. Okay, you got to understand there's a difference between Arabs and Persians. Okay, there is a difference. And by the way, and you've heard me say this for 10 years, the conflict in the Middle East is between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Everything else is a sideshow. Everything else is a sideshow. That's the hegemonic contest that's going on there. Now, in the issue of Iran, why are they important? Well, they're important because of geography. We have the Straits of Hormuz. Now, there's a couple of things to know. First of all, they're alleging sovereignty over an international waterway. There's treaties at the UN that says we have international rights of passage. So the idea that they own the Straits of Hormuz is illegal in and of itself. And sooner or later, people will come up with that. If you have bigger problems in the world called the Straits of Malacca, if that is true, if one country can assert sovereignty. Now, the other point to know is that this gets resolved one of two ways. It's either cash or kinetic. It's either economic or bombonomic. One of the two. And it gets resolved fairly quickly because they need money and the rest of the world needs oil. And what we're doing right now when you hear the blockade, well, we're blockading the Iranian ports on the Straits of Hormuz because we're preventing Iran from being able to ship anything out or ship anything in. We're stopping their money. We're going to beat them one way or the other. We're going to bankrupt them or we're going to break them. This has been going on for 47 years, and it's time that it ends. And one of the problems we have right now, and by the way, most of you don't know, I was remote director of intelligence for U.S. Central Command for about 4 years. I know this problem well. And the issue is, right now, the reason why we're in this ceasefire and the reason why we're going like, what are we doing? Are we talking? Are we not talking? Nobody knows who to talk to. You can't figure out who's in charge. Are the mullahs and the clerics in charge? Are the politicians in charge? Or is the IRGC in charge? And you don't know if you stop and you pay the toll of the $1 million to get a freighter there, you don't know if the money is going to Iran or into the bank account of the local general. It is a kleptocracy. And they've been abusing that country now for 47 years. So, as soon as we figure out who to talk to, we're happy to talk to them. And if they don't want to talk, well, then there's other alternatives. But that's really what it comes down to. And the other thing to know, and the reason why oil is not at $110 a barrel, is we have different routes now. That little east-west pipeline, we can run over 6 million barrels a day between the two pipelines that circumvent the Straits of Hormuz. This is not 20 years ago. You started with a 20 million barrel a day problem. No, we were oversupplied by 4, so that takes it down to 16. Now we can move 6 through, otherwise that gets us down to 10. And then you sneak through a couple of tankers that are 2 million barrels apiece, which they're able to do. And now the problem is not 20 million barrels a day, it's like 8 to 13. Still a problem, but not as big as they're saying. Still must be resolved, but not something that's going to go on forever. War Powers Act requires the president to talk to Congress here on the 29th. He'll probably have something to say. Now, what is checkmate? How does it end? One way it ends, and by the way, we now can use strategic bombers that drop 70,000 pounds worth of bombs at once, B-52s. But how does this end? Karg Island is checkmate. You'll start hearing a lot of news about that in the next couple of weeks. Karg Island is checkmate. 90% of all of Iranian oil goes through Karg Island. They do about 4 million barrels a day. They export 2, keep 2. So the 2 they send out go through there. You stop that, you bankrupt them really quick. That's kind of what's going on. Again, it ends either by cash or kinetics. But Karg Island is tiny. We have 2 Marine Expeditionary Forces in the area. That's 2,500 soldiers apiece. We have the Division Medic Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division. That's another 2,500 soldiers. You can put, and Karg Island, by the way, is Battery Park to 42nd Street on Manhattan. You can walk it in an afternoon and still have time for a show on Broadway. We can put a soldier every 15 feet if we want. You own Karg Island, you own the country. So that's checkmate. That is one way that it ends. The other way it ends is they negotiate. We hope they do. But in the end, this gets resolved. That's the thing to know. How does it matter for oil? Oil goes back down. How does it matter for stocks? I want you to realize when this happened, remember, we sent you out a letter that said, hey, Geopolitical events have about a 19 to 45 day life in volatility of the market. Remember last year, Liberation Day, and everybody had the tariff tantrum and the market dropped 20%. We said, quit worrying about it. And we ended up pretty darn good on the year. This thing happened. We sent you out another thing that says, hey, it's 19 to 45 days. And in 45 days, we had a round trip on the stock market. We are not going to panic over geopolitical events because the math will tell you they are short-lived. They are short-lived. And why are they short-lived? Because Americans tend to move on. They don't stop shopping just because there's a war in a different country. So our markets, those of you who are engineers in the crowd have seen this, right? This is a range fan. We calculate the probabilities, the outcome of the S&P 500 every year. This is last year. We did the range fan. We predicted. We were all right. You know, when it's above the line, it goes down, and below the line, it goes up. You want to see this next year? There you go. So we think that we're probably, and by the way, it's almost the same time every year we have this dip, right, in the last 2 years. But we're probably going to end up somewhere between 9 and 15% up. Why? It's about earnings. It's about labor productivity and earnings. That's it. All the other stuff is noise. It's noise. So although I talk a lot, I'm really about turning down the noise. Let's talk about the Fed and interest rates and inflation. Here's the thing to know. We were at 5.5% on federal funds rate for about a year. We lowered it to 4.5%. That was a 20% decline. We were there for about a year. We lowered it to 3.75. That's an 18% decline. When you take a manufacturing company and you cut their interest rate by 20%, and they have manufacturing cost of goods sold, they're financing inventory and stuff, you've taken money out of their cost. Well, when you do that, what happens? They're not lowering their prices. Their profit margins expand. So every time we see these reductions in interest rates, we see the potential for profit margins of the companies that you own to go up. And what will that do with the value of their stock? It goes up. It's just math. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation, the energy prices spiked inflation during the Ukraine war. That's that red thing. It went back down. Now we have a little spike right now. We went down to 2.5. We're up to 2.6. This is going to last maybe 2 quarters. And then we go back down. The thing to know is this. Since 1971, 53% of your life you had more than 3% inflation. It's been pretty good. Since 1971, 66% of life had more than a 3% Fed funds rate. It's been pretty good. During this period of time, we basically grew the economy at 6%. The stock market compounded, the S&P 500 compounded at 7.5%. The point of the matter is that we've been here before, and it's worked out pretty darn well. Even if nothing changes. Not a bad way to go. Let me talk about the other things people worry about, trade and tariffs. I showed you this slide last year when we were talking about that, the great tariff debate. It's the European Union and 8 countries, 75% of our trade. And what was the point? The point was that China and India must do business with us or they go into recession. Look at our percentage of GDP. All those other countries must do business with us or they go into depression. They need us more than we need them, period, end of story, full stop. And what was the result? They all negotiated a deal. And when the Supreme Court came in and said, hey, maybe you can't use IEEPA, that's fine. We have Section 122. We got 150 days of that, then we get another extra 150 days automatically, and by that time we get Section 301. So all of this hoopla about, well, the tariffs are going away. No, there's a different law that's going to let us have them. They're there to stay. And oh, by the way, it's a good idea that they're there to stay because the income that we get from tariffs allows us to have the tax cuts that you all have in the great big beautiful bill. And regardless of all that, what do? We were at 27% last year. We're down to 13.6, and after the Supreme Court, it'll be a 12.1 average tariff rate. It makes sense. The next question is, are we going to have a recession? We will. Sooner or later, have a recession. Probably not anytime soon. Probably not anytime soon. Why? Because in World War II, we put $5.1 trillion into the economy over a 4-year period of time, and it created a multiplier effect that ran all the way to 1974. And that stimulus to the economy is what built the wealth and the economic background of a lot of the people in this room, your parents and you. In our response to the pandemic, we dumped $5.4 trillion into the economy in 1 year. That's only 5 years ago, and that multiplier effect has even yet to fully expand. We got another several years of this. And so every time the economy begins to slow down, it's going to hit a new higher floor and propel us forward. Not only that, we generate more. The United States creates the most jobs in the world. We either create them here or overseas because of our demand. We're creating 178,000 jobs in February. You know, that's like more than 150,000 more than we need to maintain a 4.4% unemployment rate. You see, back a couple years ago, you had to have 250,000 new jobs every month just to maintain a 4.4% unemployment rate. But since we have new policy around immigration, we only need to create between 0 and 35,000. So our economy is easily producing enough jobs as it is today to make sure that your children and your grandchildren have a job. It's important to know. It's important to know. We're doing just fine. As a matter of fact, and you've seen this slide before, do you realize that since the peak, right before the pandemic, to now, we went down, we came back up, we've added over 6 million more jobs. 6 million more jobs, the entire labor force of the state of Illinois, 6th largest state in the nation. They generate $3.1 trillion in additional revenue. That's the GDP of France. Ladies and gentlemen, in the last 5 years, we have grown France. Now, whether you like France or not, it's the 7th largest economy in the world. When you're doing that every 5 years, does that mean you're headed into a recession? No. It means things are pumping along pretty well. Not only that, real wages and salaries continue to climb. More people are making more money than at any time in our nation's history. They don't tell you that on and I'm on TV a lot, folks. They don't tell you that on TV because it's not a bad story. I say it a lot. But the important thing to recognize is labor productivity, which is the key thing we're talking about today, is at an all-time high and going up tremendously. Labor productivity is how you increase profit margins. And how you increase profit margins increases the value of the stocks in your portfolio. And that makes you wealthier. That's what it's all about. Let's talk about the great big beautiful bill. Layla mentioned that. Here's the math. Last year, we lowered taxes but did not change withholdings. So, we created $160 billion worth of surplus that now people are going to get as refunds as they file their taxes. And this is that red line. That's $160 billion. But wait, there's more. We also cut taxes by about $630 billion. Add it together, $790 billion worth of additional stimulus coming into this economy in this year. I wish to give you some perspective. Everybody remember COVID? When they wrote everybody checks for just breathing, right? You know, your breathing wasn't your money. We put $830 billion into a flat debt economy. as a function of stimulus. This year, we're putting $790 billion, 90% of that same number into an economy that is thriving. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to hum pretty good. It's going to hum pretty good. So this year we have economic tailwinds from the fiscal stimulus. We've got tariffs that are lower, the 10% lower this year than they were last year. AI capital expenditures are $500 billion more, and the Federal Reserve remains biased towards easing. You run all those things together, it's highly stimulative. Probably more stimulative than anything I've ever seen. We still have a headwind. It's the Middle East conflict. And we think that that's going to resolve itself fairly quickly. And we'll have some volatility around the elections. We always do. But my point is we've got a very large stimulus working its way through the economy. What does that mean for our markets? Well, I already showed you the slide, but in the end, it's positive. And it's all about earnings. Earnings are 12% more this year than last year, about another 15% year after that. So record profits are expected. And by the way, if earnings are at an all-time high, what's going to happen to the stock market? It's going to be at an all-time high. It's the way it works. So when earnings go at an all-time high, markets go to an all-time high. So what do we do with all of this knowledge, with all of this stimulus coming into the economy, with things humming pretty good? What do we do? We invest in the thematic world. Remember, human behavior drives consumption. Here's my question. If I can tell you what 100 million people are going to do before they do it, do you think we can make some money? Okay, I'm from Arkansas. We go to church. I need a little bit more noise here. Do you think we can make some money? There you go. All right. How many of you took a psychology course in college? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, very predictive as to how your brain thinks. 6,000 years of human history says your brain works in a very predictable way. You'll first fulfill your physiological needs, then safety and security, then love and belonging, then self-esteem, self-actualization, in that order. If I put a plastic bag over your head, you do not know you are starving. You know you need to breathe. I take the bag off your head, you know you're thirsty, and then you know you're starving. This is how our brains work. How many of you saw a gray elephant in Denmark? Just about everybody. And so what do? Right? When we're under pressure, we're very predictable. How many of you know somebody went out and bought 75 rolls of toilet paper in response to COVID? It's those physiological needs, right? Safety and security. How many of you have your mobile device within 5 feet of you right now? Yeah, tell me, have you ever stopped the car and gone back to the house because you left this thing at home? Everybody did, right? But do you know why it's that way? Do you know why you're so addicted to this? It imprinted on you as a baby before you could even speak. When you didn't know where you were or where your mother was, you cried. What does this do? Tells you where you are and lets you dial 911. It's why you can't let it go. You're addicted to it. Love and belonging. Why do we take kids to Disneyland? Because somewhere during the day they'll look up and go, "I love you, Daddy." Self-esteem. They wear makeup under their burqas. They do. A lot of it. But also, this works in reverse. How many times have you seen somebody sacrifice their self-esteem in order to fulfill their need for love and belonging? Now, I'm a trained interrogator. I'm looking at your eyes. Most of you had 3 names buzz through your brain just then. I apologize if that's uncomfortable. But I tell you that because we really do know how you think. And that way we can build portfolios that are wallet weighted. If we know how you think, we know how you're going to spend your money. and who you're going to spend it with and how the rest of the country is going to. And it's every dollar is a vote. You choose to spend on this more than this. And it's how you prioritize your consumer behavior. And these things occur. This is investing in the no matter what. And we build portfolios that do that. And once we recognize those things, we run them through our choke point analysis. You see, I don't care what's in each of these trucks. I don't. We're going to make our money off every one of them. We want to be the toll road. I don't care whether it's AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile. We want to be the tower on the hilltop that all of them have to use so that it works. And I don't care who wins cola wars, Coke or Pepsi, doesn't matter. Because we're the lining inside the can that both of them have to buy so the drink does not taste like aluminum. You've had one of those before, right? You know, it gets really old. And you're tasting aluminum, right? And here's the interesting thing. AI doesn't change any of this. AI doesn't change what you do. It doesn't change your fundamental nature, your basic desires. 6,000 years of human history, we haven't changed that much at all. See, people pay for two things. You pay for time and you pay for feelings. That's how you allocate. You pay for time and you pay for feelings. And like I said, we haven't changed. Why did the Romans have gladiators? Because they didn't have the NFL. And you guys remember, you had a Montgomery, Ward, Sears, and Roebuck's catalog, and you circled what you wanted for Christmas, and you handed it to your parents, and then they ordered it, and they wrote a check, and it showed up in 6 weeks. What do you do now? Pull out your laptop, grab your mobile device, which is within 5 feet. Pull out your credit card, and it shows up in 4 to 6 hours. It's the same behavior. What we do does not change. How we do it changes. And boy, if you can get in front of a how and embrace that, you can do pretty darn well. Let me describe you. You probably have an Apple or Microsoft product. It's AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile. They use those towers I talked about, and the last mile is Comcast, Charter, in California it's Cox. You bought something on Amazon, probably today. Did a search on Alphabet, Google, bought something on Meta. Walmart is second to Amazon now. If it's not that, it's a company that uses Shopify or Costco. This is what you do. How do you pay for it? Visa, MasterCard, American Express. How's it get delivered? Somebody shout it out. FedEx or UPS or Amazon. How'd I know? I know because you can't do the thing we do more than anything else, which is shopping, the fastest way we do it, which is online, without using one or more of those 22 companies. They are so dominant at the choke point of that behavior called retail therapy that they're 12.8% of total U.S. gross domestic product. It would be the 6th largest economy in the world, bigger than the United Kingdom. And all those companies are in your portfolio, one way or the other. Why? Because it's what we do. And it's how we do it more than anything else. So if that's the foundation, let's talk about what's happening now. Are you interested in that? Let's talk about transformational technology. Now, years ago, when we started investing in Amazon and Meta and all these other companies and started doing really, really well, people started asking us the question, how do you know what's next? Well, we said, let's go do some research. So Ali Arik and I spent 18 months trying to figure out what are the key characteristics of transformational technology companies. And we came to the conclusion that there were two. They're either big or they're brilliant. They're big and spend a whole ton of money on research and development, or they're brilliant and do one thing exceedingly well, which means somebody else will come along and buy them. And so we started building portfolios around that. Started trying to understand those characteristics of the companies and how they got there. And we came up with this. Now, I can't tell you what the next Amazon is, but I can tell you it's going to work its way through a portfolio like this. Why? Because 41% of all the dollars spent in the United States on research and development is somewhere in that logo sheet. 19% of all the R&D in the world, because 25% of this thing is international, is on this in this sheet. You spend that much money on research and development, you're going to come up with something. Or you're a bunch of companies that are absolutely brilliant. So it's important to know, as we think through this artificial intelligence theme, we've been talking about it for over 7 years, long before it became a buzzword. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Because I'll talk to you a little briefly about a thing called Jevons paradox. And we've got to have a scientific term for everything, right? A way to think about how we think about it. But the point of the matter is, as technology, begins to lower the cost of something, the demand for it goes up. How many of you remember $25,000 computers? Some of you do. You remember $10,000 ones for sure. Well, not that many people had them. Now that they're $100, everybody's got one in your pocket. So as the price of something goes down, and AI lowers the price of a lot of things, it begins to be used more. And the things that it can be used more explode into greater labor productivity, which increases profit margins on companies that you own. And you have the opportunity to become wealthier as our economy continues to expand. So demand increases more than half. There's a guy on here, he explains it a lot better than I do.
The thing that with the Jevons paradox is it doesn't mean that everyone gets the same job and that they get there's just more of exactly the same jobs. It means that the transformation creates exponential growth as a result of the transformation in an unexpected way. Mm-hmm. So growing up, my mum worked in newspapers, and there was probably 500,000 people working in newspapers as journalists and all of those sorts of things. And that has dropped by 80% in the last 25 years. But at the same time, the number of people who are bloggers, the number of people who have Substacks, the number of people who are doing the kind of work of journalists and actually making money as a result of content creation has gone 100x. So I think it's something like 3 to 4 times more people now make their money in a way that kind of looks like a journalist than there ever were journalists prior to the technology that disrupted journalists. So it's not that those exact same jobs are replicated. It's that something similar emerges as a result.
The point is, what James has talked about, what everybody here has talked about, is using this explosive increase in technological capability to not only increase labor productivity, but increase labor opportunity and the things that we can do in the future. I want to drive this home a little bit. What was the single most important labor productivity increasing invention of the last 150 years? Anybody want to hazard a guess? How about the light bulb? In 1879, we electrified New York City and had light bulbs. You could go from working only an 8-hour day during sunlight to 24 hours a day because people could see. Tripled manufacturing capability overnight, tripled labor productivity overnight, helped propel the United States through the Industrial Revolution so that by the end of World War I, we were a global powerhouse and dominant at the end of World War II. Something as simple as the light bulb, as ubiquitous as we flip a switch today. When you think about the Transcontinental Railroad, remember I said people pay for feelings and time? Think about this. From 1850 to 1859, we spent 2% of our GDP developing the Transcontinental Railroad, the infrastructure of the Industrial Revolution, the infrastructure of the Golden Age. Right now, we're spending about 2% of our GDP on chips and the infrastructure of AI. This massive, massive investment that once implemented, it used to take 180 days to go from New York to San Francisco for a ton of freight. We lowered it to 7 days when we had it on a train. 26 times improvement. And look what it did for our nation. I submit to you that AI is the equivalent revolution of the Transcontinental Railroad and the light bulb. And what it's going to do for us is propel us so far into the future that we can't even imagine where we are right now. And something simple as farming, and we are absolutely the most productive farmers in the world. You know, we started as a nation of farmers 250 years ago. But even where we are today, take a look at what it's doing.
This book goes all the way back to 1971, and it has every single crop Daddy's ever planted in it. I uploaded it to ChatGPT. There used to be 200 certified seed farmers in South Carolina. Now there's 6. Can you log that I'm putting in another load of peanuts from the Red House pivot?
Absolutely. The Red House pivot field is on farm number 2392, so I'll log that you added another load of peanuts.
Thanks, ChatGPT. Mr. Wayne, that farm number is 2392.
Right till I got the farm number, I picked to write it down. 2392.
I was an English major with a Shakespeare concentration. I couldn't wait to get out of this place.
Well, I'm glad she's back, but I never thought she would come back.
When I first tried ChatGPT, I didn't think it was going to be that good, but big time saver. There are a handful of us farming 2,000 acres. We'll take any help we can get. Hey ChatGPT, can you generate a report for how much water we've used on the field behind the house pivot?
Absolutely. I can put together a detailed report for the field behind the house pivot.
When Daddy's gone, there's a lot to learn, and he has so much stuff in his head that I don't. So it makes me kind of nervous. How am I going to learn it all this quickly?
I'm not worried in the least bit about Rachel taking over this farm. She will do a wonderful job. Most thorough person you'll ever run across in your life.
Hey ChatGPT, I need for you to log the lots that I have in the middle building. I have Paul lot 142, the Coker 227s, and can you make a map of that?
Absolutely.
Here's your seed layout map. Can you tell me what's wrong with these soybeans?
These soybeans are showing signs of stress.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see everything just fine. It looks like the part number is AH20360.
Appreciate it.
Send me a bill.
ChatGPT keeps the record straight, does the math, and remembers what I can't. For over 100 years, my family's been doing this, and I don't want to be the one to mess it up. I hope I'm not.
You won't. You're too thorough.
And hard-headed.
Hard-headed. Farming is tough, but farmers are tougher. Rachel, I need a little bit of starting fluid.
How much longer do you think this pivot has?
Why don't you ask that thing?
ChatGPT?
It might not work at dark.
No, he works at dark.
Practical applications. What we do does not change. How we do it changes. It's a function of AI plus H. It's going to partner with us, not replace us. It's going to make us better and more productive because we are the most adaptive beings on the planet. And what we do does not change. How we do it changes. And when you get in front of a how, then you revolutionize things that are going on. Many of the jobs 18-year-olds today will have 10 years from now don't exist yet. That's how fast things are moving. But they will. They will. In new industries, new ideas, and new things that are going to increase labor productivity and propel everyone's wealth forward. That's what's happening now. Are you interested in what's happening next? Because in addition to all the chips and all the things that we're doing, we're just scratching the surface of the next revolution. A revolution of what we're doing, the revolution of space. And now you get to know what's on the inside of the coat. The next big revolution is space. This is SpaceX Super Heavy. The ability to launch something of 30-meter diameter into space. It's like 15 school buses at once. And when you're able to do that and put so many things in extraterrestrial orbit, you're able to really cut the cost dramatically of the next big revolution. Right now, look, in 2010, it cost about $20,000 to put a kilogram into orbit. Now, a kilogram is like 2 little water bottles, right? 2 12-ounce water bottles is a kilogram. Now, Falcon 9 does it for $2,000. When we get Super Heavy up there in 2028, Starship's going to do it for about $20. Massively dramatic reduction in cost. And when you're able to do that, you're able to solve great big problems with how we communicate, how we get things done. We talk about data centers, and everybody's saying there's a problem with data centers. They use too much power, they use too much water. Guess what? We can launch those suckers into space and put them into orbit. They have a solar array that has all the power that they'll ever need. The backside of it cools them, because that's how those thermodynamics work. And the data center sits up in space, fully powered, and just beams information back and forth. This is the revolutionary that we have. Remember Jevons paradox. We're just scratching the surface of what's next. Now I want to move on. I'm going to take a personal moment. I'm going to talk about 3 people, well, 2 of them. That's Eldon Dryden Pence Sr., Eldon Dryden Pence Jr., and Eldon Dryden Pence III on the day that I graduated from Harvard. That was a while ago. We didn't have ChatGPT. We didn't have any of those things. But I want to switch our conversation from all the wonderful things that are happening in our future to propel your wealth to something about maybe what you should think about doing with it. You see, my grandfather was in the railroad business. He was a pretty famous guy. He ran the railroads from 50 miles inside the border of the United States all the way in during World War II, so much so that he got an award from the president for doing that. Not only that, he invented a couple of things that you're aware of, probably the 100-unit coal train, which made energy for the central part of the country economically viable. The intermodal transportation system, those big crates and things that you see, those containers that go on trains, it's him. The refrigerated rail car that allowed fresh chicken to go from Springdale, Arkansas to Chicago and to the rest of the world. He did all that. My dad, he graduated from medical school at 21 and invented a thing called remote cardiac monitoring so that rural hospitals could send, Bob, you're shaking your head, you know about it, right? Rural hospitals could send EKGs to regional hospitals where there was a doctor that could actually read them. Because what was happening is in rural hospitals, somebody had a heart attack and nobody could read an EKG. And the patient died on the way to the main hospital. So he invented that stuff. And now we send radiology things to India and other places, but he was a pioneer of that. So I'm the underachiever in the family. But they left me something better than all of that. They transferred this. Yes, BS money. My dad was pretty clever. He said it was bull, explicatively to money. But it's not an amount. It was a principle. Because they wanted to transfer their values, not just their wealth. And my dad said, Dryden, you always got to have some BS money. So what is that? He says, well, every time I sell something and get a royalty, I put it over an account. Every month I take some extra money and I put it over an account that your mother does not know about. because if she did, she would spend it. But then I let that money grow, and I invested. And when that money reaches a certain level, you know what I do? I take it and I spend it. And I spend it on something for the family. I spend it on an experience that makes a big difference. And I realized, oh my goodness. That's why my dad would load up my sisters and I and all of our friends and take everybody on a vacation. That's why we could do crazy things. And he never worried about how much it cost, because in his mind, he'd already spent it. Because he said, Dryden, you're never going to remember my net worth, but you're going to remember our net life. And what I realized is he left me with something important. And I want to share it with you. Grandparents, parents, think about this. Find some money that you got somewhere. We've made you a lot of money. Hopefully you've got more. And get with your Pence Wealth Management advisor and open a BS Money account. We're going to do our best to make that grow. I need you to do your best to spend it on something that matters for the future of your family, your children, your grandchildren. I have never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. Never. But if you take some of the wealth that we've tried to create for you and you spend it on experiences for your children and your grandchildren, your spouse, those are memories that you'll hold on to, and you won't worry about what it cost because you've already spent it. And it's grown. And it's something that empowers you and enables you to have life experiences. What do we pay for? We pay for time, and we pay for feelings. Do me a favor. Set up one of those accounts. I'm going to do my best to grow it. I ask one thing in return. Send me a picture. Whatever that moment is, send me a picture so we can see it in your annual review. Because that's what this is all about. How do we make more of your life? So today, ladies and gentlemen, we've walked through here. You've had My Park talked about how Jump AI gets you right so we can get it right. Doug Frazier's talked about how Wealth.com helps get your trust right. Robert Mustafa talks about how Olista Plan gets your taxes right. Wealth Vision helps get your plan right. And Layla wraps it all together, how we get it all right. And James Taylor talked about how AI can improve your work and your everyday life. And I hope I've convinced you that all of this is going to have a strong economy and increase labor productivity to drive earnings and growth in the market. Wrap all this up. AI plus H is a new era of labor productivity, that it's going to propel everything forward. Because you see, what you cannot change, you need to embrace. And ladies and gentlemen, the future's so bright, I gotta wear shades.
I'm doing all right, getting good grades. The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. I gotta wear shades. I got a job waiting for my graduation. 50,000.
Now, thank you. Now, for our online attendees, make sure that you use the QR code and enter in your raffle for the Amazon gift card. For the rest of you, please fill out the client survey and the guest survey. Check off the things that are interesting to you. During lunch, the team will grab those things and turn them in, and we'll get stuff done afterwards, after lunch. Great food's going to be coming for you. Next year's luncheon, mark your calendars, is April the 24th. Bring your friends, tell your neighbors. We'll try to make it interesting and a lot of fun. Here's the disclosures, and Thank you very much.